Hey everybody, this is Perch. Can you come and go as a fan? Of course you can. You can do anything you want. But I noticed that so here's something I think is normal, and I'm going to need your help in the comments to kind of tell me, what you think. If this is a true statement, if this applies to you or doesn't apply to you. We talk a lot about comics on this channel, and there's like 10 billion other channels out there also talking about comics. There's more comics content than you can consume in a lifetime. If we ever get into a super super duper lockdown, then people could just stay home and like binge. Actually, that'd be terrible. Nobody would want to do that. Anyway, be that as it may. So one thing that I think is normal, but you'll have to tell me otherwise in the comments, is that people's interest, comes and goes in comics over the years. You get very excited about something. Maybe it's a story, an artist, a writer, something, and you follow it really closely. You get really super excited about it. It builds up, and you find yourself buying a lot of comics. You find yourself buying spin-offs of those comics and tie-ins and everything else. You get really excited about an event coming up. I see a lot of people who came into comics, came back. Actually, before I get there, let me finish kind of this arc. But you get excited, but then over time, like something else catches your mind. A really cool video game comes out. You get super excited about it, and it draws your attention away. Maybe you get married, you have a kid, you get a job, you start drinking heavily, you start experimenting with no, I'm going to stop there. But anyway, something happens that gets you out of comics, and you just start to slowly bleed away. And the way that arc always seems to be, and I see this in the shop. Somebody comes in, they pick up their pull box list, and there's some people that like get the comics and they flip through. What did I get in here? Oh, there's a cover. And then I see them like go to the shelves and they kind of look around and they're like, oh yeah, here's this comic. And oh, I forgot about this one. I should have had that pulled. And then there's that customer. And then there's the other customer that comes in and they're like, they give you their number, I'm box 32. And then you hand them their stack and they're like, yeah, fill it up. And they don't even look. They don't look at the covers. They don't go back to the shelf to see if they're missing anything. They don't care. And then they give you their money and they leave. And that's the customer. I tell the people that I'm working with, it's like that person is going to stop buying comics in 6 months, or at least, those are kind of like the Walking Dead of customers. They're people who are just collecting because it's a habit, but they're not even reading the comics at that point. They're kind of, the interest is gone. And I find that if you get really heavily into comics, if you get really heavily into YouTube, if you get heavily into comic message boards or social media comics, or all this, if you get very, very into it, then it almost has it accelerates that lack of interest. Eventually you get kind of burned out. It's just too much. And then it fades away and you're gone for a period of time. Now, oftentimes you come back, something strikes your eye, you come back, you start getting into it, and you repeat the whole cycle again. But I think that's pretty normal. I don't think you get people who are just super ultra, super plus ultra into comics all the time. They just stay there and it never goes away. I think that ebb and flow is normal. Now, I think that the publishers have a really hard time knowing what to do with that ebb and flow of a customer. And I would argue maybe they don't even care. I don't know that that's something that really crosses a lot of people's minds of, hey, how do we keep people that are excited? How do we help them pace themselves? How do we pull them back in when they start to wander away? But things happen. And I think the story I was going to tell, I interrupted myself about a bit ago, was when Donny Cates went on to Venom. The right handful of things happened where people got excited about Venom as a property. It's like, oh, we're going to do something with Venom. It's going to be Eddie Brock. It's the original Venom. There's a lot of talk about, this is the real Venom. So, and Donny Cates I hear good things about that guy. So let's get in. And I saw a lot of new people come in, get that book, and that was like the gateway. And then slowly over time, they start collecting more things. And then there's the Absolute Carnage event. And then there's, King in Black coming up. And King in Black is, in my mind, kind of the top of the roller coaster, where a lot of the people who came in and they bought Venom and they kind of started buying comics more regularly and they start getting that excitement going again, it's all leading up to this big old event. And they will more than likely buy a lot of the tie-ins and the crossovers and all these other pieces. And that will be too much. The core event, hopefully the core event is good and it ends well and it sticks a landing and all that great stuff. But the danger is that all those tie-ins and all that extra noise, it does tend to exhaust fans. And this is where I think the comic publishers have it 180 degrees opposite of what actually happens. I think the publishers believe that those tie-ins and everything else get people bridged into new books. You get a fan who came for Venom, but now they're reading the Sword tie-in to King in Black, and they're like, "Oh, what's this mutant thing over here?" And then they start buying the X-Men books. I think that's what they believe is going to happen. But as a shop owner, I can tell you, I don't know that I've ever seen that really happen in any great numbers. It's usually the opposite. People buy maybe a little bit more than they wanted to or should or realized for these events. And then in the months that follow, they start cutting back more dramatically because they feel like they got overexposed. And I've heard so many times the comment of like, well, I haven't even read all those tie-ins. A lot of them are still in bags. And again, that's another red flag. If you get people who are buying comics and they're not even bothering to read them, that's a sign that they're on the other side of the hill going down, and they're going to start to lose interest in comics. So I'll say again, for the people who are listening right now, throw in the comments below kind of your history and your arc with all this stuff, because I think there is a real lesson here for publishers and writers and editors and planners of, be careful, don't let this happen. It's why I think, don't go overboard with event tie-ins. I think it's probably going to be more detrimental than positive for you in the long run. I think what's weird is that you can go through Comic-Con. I've talked to editors at Marvel and DC both, and there's somewhat of a consensus that the tie-ins are net negative when you do too many. There's not like disagreement on this. And if you look at the numbers, you see kind of decreases, you see an acceleration of titles falling and everything else. People seem to know this, but then they do it anyway. And that's the weird part. I haven't had somebody sit down and go, well, here's how I would do it anyway. I've had people sit down and say, well, this is just what you're supposed to do. But why are you supposed to do that? Why? Because I don't think it helps. And I do think it accelerates this problem where you have people come in and out of comics. And what you want, and you can see lots of math, what you want is somebody who is active, interested, excited about comics, and regularly buying comics. And you even if you get occasional like super boosts out of it, it's better to have the boring, stable kind of flat line of somebody just buying comics every month consistently and no problem, than to have some, people come in and like suddenly buy 10 more comics in a month or 20 more comics in a month. It's better because those swings up always lead to swings down. And the swings down tend to be unpredictable. It tends to be longer. Like the swings up tend to be shorter than the swings down. What I mean by that is you come in and you start buying more and more and more comics because you get excited about something. And you do that for 3 months or 4 months or maybe 6 months. But then when you pull back and you start buying less, the buying less lasts for a year or 2 or 5. There's a lot of customers that come in and say, well, they've been out of comics for like 5, 10 years. And if you're in the comics business, that's bad news. You don't want somebody out of things for 5 to 10 years. That's terrible. That's the problem. And that's what you want to avoid. And I think there's some easy ways to do it. But I hope, so now I turn it back to all of you. I think what I've described is pretty normal fan customer behavior. It's certainly what I see in the shop and what I see from regular buyers. And I think, again, this is pretty common knowledge. It's just maybe people don't know what to do with it. And so common knowledge doesn't necessarily mean knowledge. It just means everybody's aware of a problem. They don't know what to do with that problem. I think that's kind of where we are. But what about you? What are the factors in which you've kind of pulled back in your buying habits? What are the factors where you were buying a lot and then you kind of decided to buy less? And and how long did you buy less? How long did you stay out of comics? And what brought you back in? What are the things that get you excited again, that you decide, hey, I need to get back into this. I need to start buying comics, start reading things. This is exciting. What kind of elements led you to do that? That's what I'm curious to hear about. So if you don't mind, throw a comment below. Let me know what your experience is, what excites you, and what you do. Subscribe, click the bell for notifications. If you subscribed before, you might want to check. You get unsubscribed all the time from YouTube. So I do thank everybody who's subscribed and helps me out and gives me good suggestions and advice. And comments, and all the rest. Sometimes I get it right, sometimes I get it wrong, but I'm always thankful for your participation and everything that you do. So thank you, and thanks for listening.